Welcome to this week's Mindset Monday, where we get together and talk about the things that actually matter. I'm Beth Jones. I'm your host here in the Mindset Academy. And as always, I'm immensely grateful to have you all with me for this week's episode. Um, this week's episode is really different, and I think I know it will hit home for many of you um, because there are a couple of patterns that are specific to high achievers and leaders, especially in our modern world. And leaders are kind of bearing the brunt of it, right? Because we're in a very unique position. So, we're going to talk through how these things affect leaders of teams, of families, of companies, of businesses differently than they're impacting maybe the rest of the population, and how it actually increases our level of hardship to get through it. Additionally, we're going to talk about how the problem is actually much deeper and much more severe than you may be aware of at this point because of the things we're going to talk about. So you all know today's topic from the title is gaslighting in the nervous system. And so we'll talk first about this idea of gaslighting, which, in recent times, we've become, I think, far more aware than maybe we ever were about the concept of narcissism or narcissistic behaviors. And gaslighting is one of the tactics that these kinds of toxic personalities tend to use. High achieving humans are often much more prone to entering into, at some point, relationships, either friends, business partners, romantic relationships with a narcissist, because narcissists feed on the kinds of things that high level humans and overachievers tend to provide, right? They thrive on someone constantly providing for them. They thrive on people bending over backwards to make them happy, to please them. It's like they're the center of the universe, right? And gaslighting is one of the tactics that they use to enhance their control. And I'm going to read you the definition from the American Psychological Association because I don't want to mix my words around. Gaslighting is manipulating someone into doubting their own perceptions, experiences, or understanding of events. And so if you've been in a toxic relationship or you've run into a narcissistic personality at some point, you're probably familiar with this pattern, that you may say that something happened in this way and they'll say that's not true. You don't remember everything, your memory's terrible, you don't know what you're talking about, and then they'll come up with this like completely fabricated chain of events, right? But the way we're going to talk about it today, and I'll remind you again, if you're here, say hello. I love knowing you all are tuned in here. If you're catching a replay later, drop a replay, drop a heart. We'd just love to know that you were able to tune in this week. So the follow-on question then is, well, Beth, if that's the definition of gaslighting, how is it even possible that we can gaslight ourselves? Okay, well, there's two, this is not the finite list, but there are two reasons for where this voice in our head comes from that causes this kind of criticism on ourselves in our internal dialogue, this bully that's living in our brain. And one, it's being raised in a home with immensely high expectations. And the other is having been in a relationship, a long-term relationship, where someone was training your brain to respond to things in this way and making you constantly question your own perception of reality. And if you've been in those environments for a long time, then this is the voice that gets programmed in your subconscious brain that automatically discounts whatever it is you're thinking or feeling, because you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or you're forgetful. Excuse me. I don't know what's going on with my voice this afternoon. And so this voice gets programmed in our heads, and we're constantly beating ourselves up about it. So how do we gaslight ourselves? Again, this is an internal dialogue, and these things may sound familiar to you, these examples. I'm sure they do, because they certainly are things that I've used on me over the course of time. Why are you being so lazy? You didn't even do anything today. And usually this will come on the heels of me running around town, running a bunch of errands that were absolutely necessary, and solving problems and answering emails and answering the phone and being like just constantly on the move, and my brain constantly activated all day long, and not having eaten and all of these other things, right? But the programming in my brain in my before would say things like that, would say, you don't have anything to be tired about. You didn't do a thing today. You skipped the gym because you're lazy. You got up later than you should have. And now you think you're tired? What right do you have to be tired? And I'm just here to tell you that you don't, being tired is not a right that you earn. You can just be tired because your nervous system is operating at maximum capacity, or there's different levels of tired, right? There's physical exhaustion that comes from physical exertion, but there's also mental exhaustion when you just run out of bandwidth. There's emotional exhaustion when you're processing emotions or carrying emotions or dealing with loss that are just really heavy. And carrying that around all day requires an immense amount of energy, right? So another example, I don't need help, I can handle it all. Well, the reality is that, and listen, I lived it, I get it, I've said it, I believed it to be true until I looked backwards and realized how many balls I was actually dropping at that time. And because the reality is that you will drop a plate and you will drop balls. It's the impact on your life is going to depend on whether the balls that are getting dropped were actually of high value to you and you didn't realize it until it was too late, or whether they actually happen to be inconsequential things that you dropped, that there actually was no consequence for, because it was something that you put on your plate that actually just didn't even need to be there. If you've been here long enough, you've probably heard me say at some point that 85% of the things we do every day can either be delegated, automated, or don't need to be done at all. And this is how, taking intentional steps to clear our plates of all of these things that aren't abundantly necessary or high value priorities for us are, just things we're doing, right? And we can manage all of that and free up time for ourselves when we start acknowledging the number of things that we don't actually have to do, that we've told ourselves we have to do, and piled on our plate. If you're not connected to my personal profile, this video resonates very deeply with a post I wrote this morning about the luxury of being able to have a breakdown and collapse into like a pile of exhaustion for days at a time, which was a fascinating thought process I went through many years ago that actually made me realize the depth of how not okay I was. Because I was responding with such little compassion and kindness in a situation where someone was talking about really reaching their breaking point. And because I was at my breaking point and forcing myself through it, even though it was very muddy and I felt like I was walking with concrete boots on every day, because I could force myself through the actions of every day, I was like, man, must be nice. Must be nice to just be able to collapse in exhaustion, which Like who says that? And I know saying that out loud here, I know that that's something that so many of you, if not all of you, have actually thought and have reflected on later and been like, oh my gosh, like what a terrible human I am. But you're not a terrible human. You're just putting far too much pressure on yourself and you have the formula backwards. And that's something I talked about in the post too. Anyway, so gaslighting, it's also these feelings of guilt and shame that we get when we get so tired that we have to rest, right? Because overachievers don't often choose rest, rest chooses them. And when we get sick, or when we're literally so bone tired we can't move anymore, we're still laying there going, you don't have time for this. This is lazy. You could and should be doing more for people. You could and should be doing more. I don't care how tired you are. Do better. And we say these terrible things to ourselves, right? Can you imagine saying something like that to a friend? To somebody that you care about deeply, who you care about like their health and wellness and emotional state and mental capacity? Can you imagine? But we say these things to ourselves all the time, like we're robots that don't need rest and don't need to eat proper meals and don't need hobbies and joy and laughter and connection. And we just keep forcing ourselves through, pretending like everything's fine and that our break is going to magically come one day. And for some of this category of human, the break comes when their bodies fail them. The break comes when they end up in the hospital after a cardiac event or a stroke or some other catastrophic medical diagnosis that lands them in the hospital. And then what? So we can solve the problem now and avoid an event like that altogether, or we can pretend like we're fine, even though we know full well that we're not, and wait for that event to come. And when that event comes, there literally will be nothing you can do to force yourself through because you'll be in a hospital bed. That's how this works. The severity of this kind of unease is far deeper than we like to think. So let's talk about how gaslighting ourselves on a regular basis affects our nervous system, affects the way our body, our physiological human form functions, and what the depth at which that can and will cause illness if it goes unchecked. Okay? So burnout, and this definition will also sound very familiar. Burnout is a term that gets thrown around a ton again in our modern society. People say, oh, I'm just burnt out. Like it's nothing. Oh, I'm just stressed. Cool. Well, stress causes cancer and heart attacks, just so we're all clear. Okay? There's no just anything about this. Burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress. Sound familiar? Hello, years 2020 to 2022 and moving forward. And it started before that because our modern world is not well. And the people that are carrying the brunt of this weight are the leaders among us. They are the people that, by the nature of the things that they do in their day-to-day lives, leading families, leading their children, leading churches, leading teams, leading staff, leading businesses, leading community organizations, leading nonprofits, leading their communities, leading their country. to some degree, have to show up every day with this air of confidence that everything's under control and everything's going to be okay. And they're terrified that if they don't maintain that composure, everyone around them will begin to doubt their strength, their ability to lead, their decision-making skills. They think that people will lose trust in them. And so they carry this immense pressure and demand to keep it all together all the time. And people that aren't leaders don't have to, they don't feel this extra 4 tons of pressure to hold it all together all the time. People that are working corporate jobs that they're not happy with, that don't have kids, that don't have grandkids, that don't have church congregations or staff or anybody relying on them to show up every day, are living and functioning very differently. I'm not saying they're okay either, because that comes with a whole nother set of challenges. But when you are a leader, then you have this additional immense pressure to perform. And even if you're not putting on a circus, you still can be in the depths of your own despair, in the darkest place you've ever been in your whole entire life, and feel like you have to put on this suit, this costume, and put your shoulders back and put this smile on your face and show up and say, it's fine, everything's okay, it's all under control, I've got this. So you're carrying additional weight of tons of people around you. And let's talk about if you're a parent at home and a leader in the community and a leader at work. Holy shit. Now there's literally not a single place in your world where you feel safe to not be okay. Where you feel safe enough to say, I don't got it. I thought I did, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how I got here, and I have no idea how to get out of this fucking pit. And this is that space. The space I work with my private clients is that space where people just like you and just like what I was living through all those years ago can show up and feel safe to say, this doesn't make me a less capable leader. Nobody here relies on me to lead them. This is the place where I can work on me. And I can show up completely authentically in the things that I'm struggling with and know that I will receive support and understanding and love and action strategies to get me the hell out of here. Because here's what happens with our nervous systems. We're just gaslighting ourselves through this freaking nightmare of a couple years of complete uncertainty, of instability, of virtual learning and remote working and just navigating just metric tons of curveballs at a time. And leaders are like, it's fine, everything's fine, I've got it all under control. If you do, I'd like to shake your hand. Because there is a lot going on right now. But what happens when we continue to gaslight ourselves and when we continue to deny ourselves our own needs, and when we continue to say, I know what's wrong, I know that I'm not okay, but I'm going to keep pretending like I am, and I'm going to keep saying that I'm fine, even though I know very clearly that I'm not. Our nervous system eventually begins to operate like we're literally in danger. because it can think, it's very primal, it can think of no other reason why we would be continuously denying our needs for wellness, for rest, for connection, for control, for stability, for certainty. Why we would continue to deny ourselves these basic human needs unless something was catastrophically wrong. And so then our nervous systems activate this place where we're constantly in fight or flight mode. And now, my friend Dr. Flux made this analogy years ago in a talk I saw him do about how the modern nervous system is responding to the modern world and adapting. That now, instead of that fight or flight response being activated because we're being, for a very short time, because we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, or we're literally in physical imminent danger that we have to get out of, our bodies are operating in that state constantly. And they can't. Our blood pressure can't take it. Our hearts can't take it. Our lungs can't take it. Our muscle systems and our hormones can't take it. Our literal physical bodies don't feel safe. Ever. Which is why we're struggling with weight. Which is why we're struggling with hormones. Which is why we're struggling with migraines. Which is why we're struggling with blood pressure and heart rate and cholesterol and nutrition and all of these other things. This is not a weight loss program, but when your body starts feeling safe in itself again, and we can dial your nervous system way back to where it's supposed to function, then you will lose weight. Because your body's not in this chronic red alert state of stress. And you're stepping way back out and taking proper breaths to nourish your blood and your body systems. And your heart rate can regulate itself, and your blood pressure can regulate itself. And you don't constantly have this tension headache sliding up the back of your spine. And your hormones can re-regulate. But instead, we're in this place where we're just going to constantly look for pharmaceuticals or other things to force ourselves through to correct a symptom of the problem instead of addressing the problem itself. You can hear me getting very like Tom Cruise jumping on the couch on Oprah right now, right? Our minds and our mindset and our emotional state is intimately connected with our physical body and the way we feel in our physical body and what kind of sicknesses we're battling. They all speak to each other and they all feed off each other. Mental wellness and gut health have been proven over and over and over to be connected. If our gut biome is not right, our mental wellness suffers, and vice versa. If our minds aren't well, then our guts go south, and then we get sick because our guts are very important, right? We know this. Humans need, this is not a desire, this is a need. Humans need to feel certainty and stability and to be able to have expectations about their life experience. To have some idea of what's coming tomorrow. Even though we all know, right, that anything can happen at any time. We know there are outlier events. We know there are accidents, right? But generally speaking, we all need to be able to go to bed at night knowing what to expect the next day and having something to look forward to. We need to feel certain about our ability to gain pleasure, to seek joy, to seek connection, to have the time to spend in our lives doing things we enjoy simply for the purpose of enjoying them. And to be able to avoid pain, to feel certain of our ability to navigate around or through hardship, whatever the situation calls for. And the control we're seeking, often in modern society, we love to pass the buck. When X, Y, and Z happen, we'll magically have more money to do these other things. Well, guess what? When X, Y, and Z get cleared up, something else is coming. And until you plant your flag in the ground and say, this is enough, I'm going to be X on this list of X, Y, Z. I'm going to seek out the control, how to access the control and the connection and the clarity I need to make everything, to steady the ship and to make everything else better. Because that's what happens when we take radical ownership over our own lives and our own behavior and our own influence over the life experience that we're living. Everything changes. Every single thing changes. Our relationships improve, our careers improve, our businesses improve, our wellness improves, our health improves, our sleep improves. Our time management gets better. All of it. Because now all of a sudden, instead of sitting on the back of the ship, getting tossed around in the storm going, man, this sucks, and handing out blankets to people and making sure that everybody's tended on this boat that's going through this storm, we're standing up and walking intentionally to the helm of the ship and saying, no, I'm gonna get all of us out of here. Because that's also how it works. When leaders resource themselves to make more intentional, deeper impact, everybody benefits. Because when you stop solving for the symptoms of your own root problems, now you have the tools to help other people stop solving for the symptoms of theirs. And you can help them on deeper, more long-lasting, more profound levels without sacrificing yourself in the process. Can you imagine being on, say it's a 100-year-old sailboat, this big giant sailboat, and there's 100 people on the sailboat, and the storm comes out of nowhere, and you're just getting tossed around in the waves, and you're the leader, you're the captain of the ship. So instead of taking a moment and resourcing yourself and figuring out exactly where you need the boat to go to get everybody to actual safety, you're walking around handing out bottles of water and blankets and telling everybody it's going to be okay. And that's great. They need to hear that. But you know what they actually need, and what you need more than anything else, is to get the hell out of the storm as quickly as possible. Because when you get out of the storm, nobody needs blankets or bottles of water anymore. Now you're helping them from a completely different place. And that's where the power is. But you can't get there if you're not willing to captain your own ship. And that's what we do here. Part of, so briefly, we'll talk about the difference because I know we're headed over time today. The difference between Life on Purpose, which is the mini series that's coming out in here in the Mindset Academy in the next couple weeks, that series, and the reprogram, which is the program I work through with my private clients, is one, the Life on Purpose is it's totally group. It's very self-guided. We're obviously going to be here every week together, walking through those lesson plans, and you'll have worksheets and action plans to start implementing those things in your life. But that's control. It's about accessing control and starting to make intentional decisions. The reprogram is everything else. It's about truly stepping into your fullest power as a leader and fulfilling your purpose, your deep, significant purpose for being on this planet, and stepping into that from a place of confidence, of the ability to see and manage what you actually can control and stop grabbing at straws for all the things that you can't. And being able to show up from a place where you can create much deeper impact for the world around you. So the reprogram is dealing with patterns on a subconscious level and allowing us literally to just do a whole software upgrade to our subconscious brains. So we're existing in a completely different place instead of constantly having to think about it. So just to touch on those differences for a minute. I always love when you all share your ahas, what spoke to you. If you have any questions, obviously, please drop them in the comments below as well. That's it for this week. I hope you have an incredibly brilliant week. I hope that you remember that you are worthy and capable and deserving, even on the days when it feels like you're not. And I hope you know that rest isn't something that you need to earn. And importantly, burnout is not something you solve with one afternoon massage or one afternoon off or a couple of hours of quiet time. We didn't get into this mess overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. But you will get out of it much faster if you have better tools. I'm here. I would love to talk with you about it. And until then, I'll see you guys next Monday for next week's episode of Mindset Monday. I love you. You're incredible. See you soon.